Okay, so we started last week. Let me recap. We looked at the phrase righteousness of God, and in Greek is dikaisune theo. The theo, as I mentioned, is a possessive case. That means it belongs to, right? So righteousness, dikaisune can be translated both as righteousness, rightness, right? Righteousness can also be translated justice. And in the Greek and the Hebrew, they don't differentiate. They use the same word for both justice and rightness, righteousness. So now the thing that we needed to do is to say that where Greek scholars are concerned, they look at this grammatically, it could be translated four ways. Four ways. And so in English, it looks like very simple. It should be righteousness of God. That's the English possessive case. But grammatically in Greek, which is the New Testament, is written in Greek, there are probably four prepositions you can use to bring out the meaning of dikasune theo. First, this is the righteousness or the rightness or the justice. You can choose. It doesn't matter. Just remember that in the Greek mind, it's really more or less the same thing. To be right is to be just, to be fair, to be impartial, and so on. All those things all into one word. English is very fortunate. I mean, those of us who are not native speakers, we struggle to learn English because for one thing, you can have 7 different words meaning the same thing, right? It is one of the problems of learning English. As a non-native speaker, I mentioned before, you've got the word eat, and then you can partake, and you can imbibe, and you can consume. They all mean eat, right? And in Chinese, it's so simple. 吃. Yeah, that's all. One word. And with Hebrew, it's another simple language. One word can mean so many other things. So, for example, the word nefesh, it means neck, literally, neck, nefesh. But when you read Psalm 42, it says, my nefesh longs after you, God. Why would my neck long after God? And if you do a literal translation, it goes, this is rubbish. Yeah. So sometimes you need also to go back into the original to say, what does nefesh mean to the Jew reading this in so many thousands of years ago? And yes, nefesh means neck, literally. But because this is the most important part of the human body in the sense that if you strangle this person dies. You squeeze my neck, I die. Because there are 2 big blood vessels and a windpipe, and you could kill me just by squeezing my neck. So neck began to be used for as a word for life. So you could then say, my nefesh longs after you, is my life longs after you. My whole being. So that's another extension of the word life to my existence, my being. My being longs after you. My whole body, my whole soul, my whole everything. So that simple word, my neck longs after you, means so many deep things. Okay, this is just an illustration. And so now we're looking at Greek, not Hebrew. Again, it's ancient Greek, not modern Greek. So here we have this possibility. Number one, the dikaiosune theo can mean the righteousness in God. The preposition is in. The righteousness in God means the attributes of God, the character of God. God's character is righteousness, rightness, justice, fairness, impartiality. That's the dikaiosune. Okay, so of in God, the attributes of God. Now, in the Hebrew mind, and even though Paul is the writer of this book of Romans, the book of Romans written by Paul, is an apostle of Jesus, and he's a Greek speaker, a Greek writer, very highly educated. He would be the PhD of his time. University of Tarsus, one of the biggest centers of learning in the ancient world. And he's a graduate, a PhD from the University of Tarsus. And essentially, this bright intellect who speaks Greek grew up as a Hebrew, as a Jew, speaks Hebrew. And so he has, I suppose, kind of like people like myself, some of you are like that, grew up in a Chinese culture, learn English, almost native speaker, but never quite native speaker, but you're kind of in between 2 worlds. So that was Paul. the Hebrew mind as he grew up, but the Greek speaking Hebrew mind. And therefore, he uses Greek a little bit like a Hebrew would do, which sometimes you see it in the original Greek. But now here we have this mindset of the Jew. When you talk about an attribute of God in the Hebrew culture, it's not just a static attribute. God will manifest his attribute in action. So when we say the righteousness in God, there will always be a righteousness by God. God will put it into action. His justice will be actionified, activated. Right? So the first meaning, righteousness in God, justice, fairness in God. Secondly, righteousness by God. He makes it right, makes the world right. We may not like his timing. It may take too much time for us. It takes too long for us, but he's doing it outside of time. So God, in his time, acts his attribute. So righteousness by God. And the third preposition is the righteousness of God. God is the origin, the source of righteousness. It flows from him. He's the origin of love. It flows from him. He's the origin of peace, shalom, wellness. It flows from him. So the righteousness of God, and therefore it comes to the fourth meaning, the righteousness from God. We are the receivers of the righteousness from God. He's the source. It flows to us. Now we receive it. So the righteousness from God is how most Bible scholars look at Paul's expression here. Four possible meanings and translations. The last is the traditional and most accepted meaning, that is the righteousness that God has actionified and activated and now rests on me, is now received by me. And I'm the recipient of that righteousness. I am not in any way righteousness. I am not in any way righteous. And even as a Christian 50 years later, I am still not as righteous as God would want me to be. But tonight we're going to learn this terminology. It's a legal terminology. It's called justification. Justice. The word justice is inside there. The time of justice. And justification is what Paul is talking about here. And we'll deal with it a little bit more. So righteousness from God. At the moment that God sees me, I am filthy, I'm sinful, I am totally unsuitable for heaven, unsuitable to be in the presence of God, because even just a tiny bit, it's like a big piece of cloth, white cloth, and all you need is just one little speck of dirt and it's no longer white technically, right? So God would not have us in his presence at all, no matter how perfect we are or good we are as human beings. We are never as right as God is. Job, nobody. Romans 3, Paul will say later on, no one is righteous, no, not one. And it's very emphatic, no, not one, not a single person. Even Moses. As the Bible goes, of course, it's only Jesus who is. Only Jesus is righteous. And of course, actually, Jesus is God. That's why he is righteous totally.
One man, no
Oh,
woman.
one man, no woman. Yes. Okay, so we'll come back to this. Yeah. So the righteousness from God is conferred, given, bestowed on us. It is not ours to receive by right. We do not deserve it. And so, why does God need us to be righteous? Because otherwise, it's, I don't know, it sounds a little bit, I don't know, maybe racist or just totally inhuman. But I think a natural reaction, even as human being, is we try and stay away from people. Your parents would teach us not to associate with bad people because they teach you to be bad, right? So people who walk in a disorderly manner, yeah, I can put it nicely. So essentially, our parents are trying to shield us from turning away from goodness into a world of evil and darkness. So, in that sense, God needs us to be pure as He is, but there's no way we can do it. No way at all. Paul says, not a single one of us can make it. And I guess that's how in human philosophy and religion, you've got so many religions and philosophies who are working at how do we, even if they don't believe in heaven, when Lao Tzu, Kongzi, and Confucius and Lao Tzu and Buddhas, Siddhartha Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, when these people taught, they never talked maybe very much about a God or a heaven and so on. It's just, even just being the good and right person without any divinity tied to it is tough. And so we get these ideas of reincarnation because one life is never good enough. We need 1,000 lives to even maybe get a semblance of purity that's required to be good truly. So we have all these struggles of how much do we need to do to get it right? How many lives do we have to live before we finally got it, got it true, got it clinched? And so you have always this despair or this hopelessness. I will never make it. But when the message of Jesus comes, it's like, it's too good to be true. I don't have to do anything and I'm done. No way. And it's so counterintuitive. It's so against common sense and rationality. We very often reject it. And I rejected it for 21 years. I became a Christian only at 21. I said, this is too good to be true. I don't have to do anything and I'm already admitted by God. But that actually skips a very big part of the story. It's not me. No matter how much I do, I won't be good enough. But it's not like, okay, never mind. You just come in. You just come in. I open the door. You just come in. I don't care that you're dirty, wearing dirty clothes, and you're not a single bit of goodness in you. It's not that. There's an interposition of somebody who is pure and sinless, and that's Jesus Christ. And if you really believe in the Trinity of God, the idea of God Himself becoming a human being to be the shield and to be the shelter for you to go into the presence of the perfect one. Okay? So another way of doing it, now I'm a lawyer, so I love explaining this. Imagine I go on the 401 and 100 kilometers an hour, that's the speed limit. But there's nobody around, no cars around, and the road is all clear, no ice, no whatever. So I go 160 and feel good. Yeah, 160. In Germany, it's okay on the Autobahn, yeah, but not in Toronto, right? And on the 401. So I get, unfortunately, there is a drone. Nowadays, they use drones. I had a drone on top. I didn't see the drone. The drone captures my number plate and my speed. And I'm charged in court. I go and appear before the judge. It's way over the limit. They don't give you a fine. Simply, you go to court and defend yourself. Tell us why you were going at 160.
Are there really drones out there, or they're just scaring people?
I'm sure there are drones. Either that, or they have these gantries across the highway or the bridges, and they just put a camera there, and that's it. Yeah, they catch you. Yeah. Okay. So you've got all these signs on top, too, very tall, and they just put a camera on top. They can say it's a drone, but it's not a drone. But you'll get caught. Yeah. So here you are before a judge, and the judge says, "Okay, Richard Dong, 160. I think I should throw you in jail and take away your car and take away your license."
That was not accurate. It's 180.
Too bad. The camera doesn't lie. Yeah. But then, Richard, you can go now. Huh? Why? Shouldn't you confiscate the car? Yes, it's gone. Shouldn't you confiscate my driving license? Yep, it's gone. But why am I free? Well, you were supposed to be fined. I was going to fine you $10,000, but David paid it. It's paid.
David.
Yes, Nelson.
Based on what you said,
Mm.
that is exactly how judges provide something. Like whatever crime you commit, whether it's small or big, whether it's like, oh, you kill someone or it does petty theft, the judge doesn't always send you to jail with death penalty. They'll give you a different kind of sentencing. Like for example, there's one guy who was playing loud rock heavy metal music that the bus driver and all the passengers didn't like him, so he got arrested by the police. And the judge said to him, "Okay, we're not going to send you to jail. We're going to make you listen to classical music. If you don't listen to classical music for about $500, we're going to send you to community volunteering."
It's punishment for you because you don't like the music, right?
Yeah, simply that's how judges do it. They
Yeah.
don't just sentence people to jail. They have a variety of ways to sentence.
There have been many different ways of punishing, so to speak. And in fact, you have something called jail by default. So $10,000, you don't want to pay, you go to jail. 3 weeks. You either pay 10,000 or you go to jail. And here is David saying, Richard, I'm paying for you. Go free. And Richard says, no, I'm not going to receive anything from anybody. It's beneath my dignity. I will serve the jail term. I don't have 10,000, but I'll serve the jail term. Yeah, you're free to do that. You're free to do that. The choice is up to you. You take David's kindness and wonder what's his agenda, maybe sort it out later on. But you want to go free. 10,000, thank you, David, I'm going free. And the judge doesn't care. His system, the fine has been punished. I mean, the crime has been punished, the fine is paid. You go. You're justified. You've paid the justice. Justice has been paid. Whether you paid it or not, the judge doesn't care. It's been paid. And you, anyway, you lost your car and your license, so you probably feel a bit of pain. But here is the idea that you could, as Richard says, no, my father will pay. I wait for my father, and you wait and wait, and the father doesn't send a check. And meanwhile, you're rotting in jail, right? Yeah. So you got, the choice is yours. Go to jail, get David's kindness, and maybe say, okay, David, when my father sends a check, I'll pay you back. So choice is there. So here is this idea of the justice of God, that you deserve to be punished, but somebody paid your punishment. Jesus paid it all. And so we sing about Jesus paying it all. And because of his righteousness, his sinless, in a way, the picture here is God, the judge, looks at you, Richard, through the veil that is Jesus, the shelter that is Jesus, and he sees only Jesus. He sees you behind Jesus, but he sees Jesus, and the righteousness of Jesus bring you into heaven. It's your passport, it's your visa. But at that moment when the judge declares you just and justified, you are not pure, you're not perfect, you are not it at all. It's just a status. You're clean to go, but you're still a rotten person. Right? So justification is the first stage in the walk of a Christian. I believe in Jesus. He died for me. He paid for me. I will claim his payment rather than go to jail myself, yeah, so to speak. Justification. But it's only the beginning of a long journey. Some of us short, some of us long. And that long journey is called sanctification. The word sanctus, from Latin, from Greek, it points to holiness, purity, clean. So we're saints. The English word is saints. From the word saint, from the same word, you get saint, you get sanctification. You're being sanctified, becoming saints along the way. And it takes a while. So one day I was sharing this with a Japanese who is not a Christian and explaining about this. And he was, okay, I am willing to have someone pay for my sins, pay for my punishment. But then he says, you mean I confess my sin, I agree that I'm a bad person, I need God, and I go to him. And I go to heaven because of my belief in Jesus. And if Hitler ever did the same thing, he goes there too. When I get to heaven, I see Hitler. No way. I don't like that. I don't think that's fair. Why should Hitler go the same place I go to? maybe 5 minutes before they bombed him out of existence. No, he actually committed suicide, but they bombed Berlin too. But he committed suicide before that. So, I mean, if 2 minutes before he died, he says, Jesus, I come to you, forgive me, I'm yours. He goes to heaven. And I am this Japanese young man of 20-ish, 28, 29. I'm going to work my whole life for my goodness before I get to heaven. Not fair. And it was a big struggle for him. So I told him about this parable that Jesus taught. Jesus used stories. And for those of you who like it, it's from Matthew chapter 20, and it's verses 1 to 16. And titles are not given in the Bible. We can give you a title. It's called The Parable of the Daily Worker. Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 to 16. So the story goes like this. Jesus is telling the story. And because there were people asking him about the justice of what I just said, right? Some guy, 2 minutes before he dies, he goes to heaven. And I've struggled for 50 years trying to be good, and I go to the same place. Shouldn't I go to a better place? Higher place?
The same problem, just one coin. And then
That one coin. Okay, so Jesus told the story. He says, a landowner, right? He's got a farm and he needs a lot of workers. He goes to the marketplace where they have workers waiting to be employed. He went to the marketplace and he says, I'm going to give 1 day's wage to anybody who will work for me. 1 coin, right? The denarius is a 1 day's wages. Whatever the wages would be, $100 a day, $1,000 a day, whatever it is for a farmer. He says, I will pay you that 1 coin, a denarius, and you work for me till the end of the day. And of course, people are waiting for work. They all signed up and they came. And they all were very happily working for the very good wage. It's a 1 day's wage. It's not half a day's wage for 1 day's work. It's fair wages. At lunchtime, the landowner goes out and looks for some more workers. He has got a big harvest and it's not enough workers. He goes look for some more and he tells them, I'm going to pay you the same 1 denarius for your work. Half the day is gone, but you're going to get 1 denarius. And then towards the end of the day, he goes out to the market again and he says, I really need some more people. And okay, whole lot of you, please come. As many as you can. I'm going to give you 1 denarius. Fair wages for 1 day's work. And finally, when the market closed and he gets the last few people, he says, you come and just do whatever work you can. Now we are just packing up. You go pack up and you collect your denarius. So the ones who have been working from morning, can you imagine what they say? They are very mad. They come to the landowner and say, why do you give these last guys, they work for 5 minutes and they get the same wage I got paid? That's not fair. Well, the owner of the land says, I gave you a full day's wages. You agreed to have the full day's wages. You have been fairly paid. What have you got to complain? In my own generosity, I decided to give somebody who works for 5 minutes the same pay. It's my generosity. And it's got nothing to do with justice or injustice. It's my grace, my generosity. Who are you to fault me? He didn't say that, but who are you to fault me for my generosity? So I think Jesus is basically saying sometimes human beings will look at justice from our point of view, and it's like what I say about the little girl who looks at her mother and say, you are such an ogre of a mother. I hate you. You don't let me eat sweets. You don't let me eat junk food, hamburgers and pizza and bubble tea and whatever. You are such a horrible mother. But if you are a mature person, you look at a mother and say, she's not a horrible mother. She's trying to make sure this child is not obese and have health problems and all that, right? So you need perspective, and sometimes you've got the wrong perspective of justice. And I think in this case, other than that, okay, the other problem I suppose for him is evil. Hitler is so evil. He cannot compare to me. But if you go back to the idea of sin as rebellion against God, whether you rebel a little bit or you rebel a lot, you have rebelled. Same. The child who comes, and Jesus told another story once. Two sons. One says to the father, the father says, please do this for me, sons. And one says, Father, I'll do it. Second son says, Father, I won't do it. And the first son never does it. He says, I will do it. He never did it. The second son says, I will not do it. And he does it. Who do you think the father likes better? So sometimes we suppose, I suppose, yeah, it's fair to think of things as not being fair to me. I was born poor. I was born in a family that could have been rich. My father was a rich man's son, and I used to hate my father. What an idiot! He is a rich man's son, and he becomes a poor man, and he carries things on his shoulder when he could have relaxed being carried on somebody else's shoulder. And growing up, I had that pain, I had that anger, I had that hate even. I didn't choose to be poor. I didn't choose to be poor. Born in Singapore, a very poor country at that time, I didn't choose a lot of things. And I think I shared with you, some of you, I didn't even choose the school I went to. It was chosen for me by my teacher. My teacher knew I needed to go to that school. It was the best school in Singapore. I had no idea it was the best school in Singapore. So life is like that. We get choices made for us. And sometimes we don't like it, but actually it's for our own good. And so in the end, my life, I wasn't stuck in my poverty. I wasn't stuck in my circumstances. I decided I could do something about it. And here I am in Canada. I did something about it. So you do not need to be locked into your circumstances or your genes or whatever you blame for your situation. Nima?
Yeah, you give earlier an example about Hitler. If Hitler could go potentially, or any serial train killer could go to the heaven, then what about millions of people who lost their lives because of him? I mean, it makes it a little bit injustice that if he could go to the same place as the other people go. What about those people who lost their life? They have just one shot.
So this is where the second part comes in. It's about, and Paul deals with this question in verse 17 when he says, the righteous shall live by faith. And the incredible message of the good news of God is this, that when we repent our sins and believe in Jesus, that's in Romans 10:9, we are clothed with the righteousness of Jesus, Romans 13:14, and God sees us through him, and whatever is paid, he doesn't ask for payment anymore. But remember that payment came from God himself. God gives us the gift of faith. And Paul I'll deal with this a bit more in these two verses. Paul says that even the faith that we have to believe in God, in Jesus, is a gift from God. So that we have nothing to claim of ourselves. And if you read later on in Ephesians chapter 2, Paul writes it another way. He says, we are saved by grace, not by works, meaning not by how much you have done. We are not saved by what we do. We are saved by the grace of God. Jesus paid it all. And then in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, that says, we are saved by grace, not works. Verse 9, so that no man can boast. Because if I did 50 years of good work and you only did 2 minutes, I can boast to God. I did 50 years, God. I deserve more. I deserve a bigger room. I deserve a bigger house. Yeah. So that claim from my works, actually, remember, go back to, my works will never be enough even for 1,000 years. So no, even 50 years doesn't cut it. It's not enough. 2 minutes or 50 minutes is up to the grace of the landowner. Justice is done. We all paid the same penalty, the death of Jesus. We all were paid with the same penalty. But at the same time, Paul goes on in Ephesians 2, verse 8, 9, 10, right? So verse 8, saved by faith and grace, not by works, so that we will not boast. And verse 10, so that we will do the good works that God has chosen for us from the beginning of time. So the message of Paul and the Bible is this: we cannot save ourselves by good works. No matter how much you do, it's still never enough. But Jesus did it all. That's more than enough. But so good works do not save us, but we are saved for good works. God saves us, Nima, for the 2 minutes of our life. My sister died of cancer at 25. It was such a pain. But because of my sister's death, my mother came to Jesus Christ. My mother saw the beauty of her suffering as she died peacefully. And my daughter says, she has shown me the way to die. My other children have shown me the way to live as Christians. She became a Christian. Illiterate lady, doesn't read the Bible, doesn't know how to read. And she says, I see the goodness of God. So no matter how simple our faith or how complicated our faith, how good we do, not enough. God says, I have given you a gift of faith, just come. And then now that you are a Christian, I have given you a passport for heaven. Your job is whatever number of years I give you, 60, 70, 50, 40, you do good works so that you reflect my love for the rest of the world. Glorify your Father in heaven. That's right, Jesus said. Let your light so shine that people will see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. It's not for my own glory, it's for God's glory. I do this because I have been saved by God to do this. So, verse 17, Paul goes on to say, this righteousness is by faith. In ESV, it says, from faith for faith. And I mentioned that in the NIV, it was translated as from by faith from first to last, and different translations. So again, this clause, this verse is important to understand. Different translations would say righteousness by faith from first to last, NIV, from faith for faith, ESV, beginning and ending of faith. That's another translation, from faith to faith. That's the King James Version. So why, again, this is lost in translation, right? And the Greek, if you look at it, is, again, there are 4 ways to interpret the Greek here, which literally, if you were to translate word for word, it says from faith to faith. And that's the King James translation, from faith to faith. What does it mean? 4 ways, 4 meanings. From faith to faith, or from faith by faith, is about God's faith. Some scholars say, some Greek scholars say, from God's faith to our faith. So it's a gift of God, flowing from God to us. So this righteousness is from God to us, from faith to faith, from God to us, from God's faith or faithfulness to us. Okay, from the faithfulness of God to human faith. So this speaks of the origin of righteousness from God to us. Secondly, from one faithful believer to another faithful believer, from faith to faith. So this means how righteousness grows. You see, my mother sees the children and she tells my wife, her daughter-in-law, I have come to faith because I see my children and I'm touched by their faith. So that's how faith spreads from one person, faithful person, to another faithful person, from faith to faith. Righteousness spreads that way. The third meaning is from one degree to another, how righteousness grows. So now I start off, and so some translation says from beginning to the end is all about faith. Why? At the beginning, I have a little bit of faith, but it grows over the years. 50 years later, I have a little bit more faith than when I started. So from faith to faith describes my own righteousness growing from a little bit to a lot more. Okay, and the fourth meaning, and that's the ESV translation, from faith for faith, meaning, and NIV, there's another translation says from first to last, by faith from first to last, meaning it is entirely by faith. How do we get righteousness? Not by work, not by doing 50 years of good work. It is simply by belief, by faith in Jesus Christ. That's all that is needed. And so it is not a free gift in the sense of I pay nothing for it and it's such a good deal. So my late father would used to say to me, so you are a Christian. You can go and murder, you come back and say, God forgive me, and God forgives you. Then you go out and murder again. And you keep on doing that, right? Or my wife, before she was a Christian, she says, wow, I want to be a Christian because it's such a good deal. I can, do bad things, confess to God, go back and do bad things, and come back and confess to God, and just go on until I finally go to heaven. The reality of it is my wife will tell you this, her own story. I'm here to tell because she's not here. You can check with her, whether I'm told the right story. She was an English teacher. She was teaching English in a girls' school. And one day she made a mistake. She actually accused one of the girls in the class of doing something wrong that she didn't do. The girl didn't do it, and my wife scolded her as a teacher. Asian teacher can scold your children without any problems, even punish them in those days, right? Cane them or whatever. And she's scolding this girl in public in a class. And this, imagine the shock of this girl. I didn't do this, and you are scolding me. I'm ashamed, making me ashamed and shaming me in my whole class. It's a horrible thing you did. And she, of course, goes crying. And my wife just feels, justified, right? I'm a teacher. I do that. And then she realized, I don't know how she realized, but eventually she realized that she had wrongly accused the girl of something she didn't do. Now, she's a Christian now. She could easily say, oh God, please forgive me. I did the wrong thing. I shouldn't have scolded her and shamed her in class and be done with it, right? But she says, no, the Holy Spirit that was in me kept saying to me, go and apologize to the girl in class. You shamed her publicly. You apologize publicly. My wife says, no, I'm a teacher. Teachers don't apologize. Chinese teachers, English, Asian teachers don't apologize. This is in the 60s, remember? So way back. Teachers don't apologize. Teachers don't need to apologize. But that Spirit of God is inside her, egging her, nudging her, kicking her. Finally, she says, all right, God, I know you are kicking me. I will go and do that. And I do not know how I'm going to live for the rest of my life. I will be living in shame in this class because every time they look at me, they'll snicker, they'll laugh. This teacher made a stupid mistake and she has to say sorry. So my wife says, never mind, the Holy Spirit, God tells me to say sorry, I will, and I will look at the consequences later on. And she apologized in the class. I'm so sorry, I maligned this girl, she didn't do it, and I scolded her. Please accept my apologies. And, head bowed down, she went back to teaching. She was so embarrassed. But she says from that day onwards, her students began to open up to her. And whenever there was a break, they would come to her and ask her for help, ask her to be, counseling them, teaching them different things that they didn't dare to ask in class, because in a Chinese school, you don't tell their teachers or ask your teachers anything. But they began to see that if this teacher is willing to be so vulnerable and apologize when teachers don't need to apologize, she's really a good person. And you know something, how that story ends? These kids that she's 76 now, these kids, their grandmothers themselves now, they are in the 60s. And they still put her in their chat group, their class chat group. And they still put her in the chat group and say, teacher, you are our teacher and we want you to be in touch. And they take her out for lunch now and then. 76-year-old, 60-year-olds bringing their 76-year-old teacher to lunch. She made such an impact on her life because she thought that, being a Christian is such a good deal. Just make a mistake and say sorry and then be done. And she realized, no, God will make sure you make it right. And to make it right, you apologize in class publicly. And I think I've experienced that too in my life when I have done something that I think nobody knows, and I should just apologize to God and say sorry and be done with it. doesn't happen that way. Yeah, God makes sure it doesn't happen that way. So the faith that God gives you includes this idea of following you up for the rest of your life to make sure you live a life that is righteous and good and right. So from faith to faith, my faith is entirely a gift from God, and it continues to be a God-given gift that continues to live in me, to change me, and sanctify me stage by stage. It's a long time, but it will work. And I leave it to God to take care of the 5 minute and 2 minute Christian. Yeah, that's His justice. He's the landlord. He decides how to deal with them. And I shouldn't worry about them. I should worry about my own life. Now, so Paul clinches the argument by quoting from the Old Testament, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. Chapter 2, verse 4, when he says in verse 17, the righteous shall live by faith, is a quotation. And he doesn't quote chapter and verse because the chapter and verse is written for us. It helps us to locate the verse, but it was the 15th century when the verses first got put into the... So you see the numbers and all that, they were put in the 15th century, not the original Bible. Anyway, so you go back to the book of Habakkuk and chapter 2, verse 4, and there is a problem. There is a problem because you've got the Hebrew version and you've got the Greek version, a translation of the Hebrew original, and they both say slightly different things. The Hebrew translation, which the oldest version we get is from about 900 AD or so, and it is called the Masoretic text, and it says that the righteous will live by his faith. Okay? The righteous will live by his faith. Hebrew version. The Greek version, which was translated about 125 BC before Christ, and because the Hebrews were no longer speaking Hebrew, they were speaking Greek more than Hebrew. So the Greek translation was to help them read their own Bible. And the translation is called a Septuagint, by the way. Yeah? The Greek translation says, the righteous will live by my faithfulness. Original Hebrew is, the righteous will live by his faith. And the Greek version is, the righteous will live by my faithfulness. Okay, so some people will say the Greek version is earlier, 125 BC, so that should be the version to follow, not the Hebrew version, which the latest we get is 900 AD. And Paul complicates it even more in his quotation here in Romans, the book of Romans. It says, the righteous shall live by faith.
No he, no me.
No pronoun. No me, no mine, no he, she, nothing. Hebrew version, the righteous shall live by his faith. Greek version, the righteous shall live by my faith, meaning God's faith, right? My faith, God, or my faithfulness. And Paul says, the righteous shall live, no pronoun, righteous shall live by faith. No pronoun. So whose faith? Is it God's faith or the righteous man's faith, or it doesn't matter at all? Doesn't matter at all. I think that's why Paul decided to drop the pronoun. It doesn't matter whether you are looking at faith as coming from God or coming from yourself. It's both faith, just two different aspects of the same faith. One side God, the other side my faith. It doesn't matter at all.
Essentially, we're interpreting God's faith, which is still our interpretation.
Our reflection of his faith, is it? Yeah. We are looking at God. We do not know God fully, but we think God is faithful in this way when we try to reflect it. So all the different ways of looking at faith, from faith as a source, from faith as an origin, or whatever it is, pronoun you use, whatever verb you use, is simply this idea that our faith begins in God, makes its journey through us, and gets passed on to other faithful people, and so on and so forth. And all of that is captured in this quotation: the righteous shall live by faith. It does not exclude the idea that righteousness itself is a gift from God, because it comes from God. It does not exclude the idea that righteousness can grow in me from faith to faith, from me to another person, from the other person to yet another third person. So all that is covered. And this is where I've been saying that North American philosophy, culture, not just Christianity, is very binary. And I guess it's also because in much of science is binary and computer science is binary. But we are beginning to see that computer science doesn't have to be binary, right? Quantum computing doesn't need any binary system. Life is not binary. As a lawyer, I'm trained, there's black and there's white, but there are many shades of gray in between, and I just need to convince the judge that my client is closer, the gray closer to the white than the black, right? And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But the idea is life doesn't have to be binary, this or that. But it is both this and that. Both God's faith is real and my faith is real, but my faith comes from God. So the righteous shall live by faith coming from God, and righteous shall live by his own faith that has come from God. Both are true. So another worry about this verse is, does it mean the righteous by faith will live, or the righteous will live by faith? The righteous by faith means I am righteous only because of my faith that was given by God. It is not my own faith. The righteous shall live by faith means I'm now righteous and I will live by my faith. Okay? However, basically what I mean is, however you read this verse, every meaning is possible and every meaning is true.
Or could you repeat it?
Okay? So it is the righteous by faith will live. It's about living. The righteous by faith will live. So eternal life, I'm righteous by faith, so I'll live eternal life. That is how I will live. The righteous by faith. So I will live by faith. The other is describing how the righteous people live. The righteous people will live by faith. Okay? Let me read again. The righteous by faith will live. Or the righteous will live by faith. And both, I'm sure, means the same thing eventually. Right? So sometimes I think I say this also maybe as a way of saying that when people look at the Bible, and maybe even some Christians, but particularly non-Christians, they say, oh, you have so many different versions. First of all, they're thinking of translations, and I've explained why translations are different. Secondly, they say, but even the Greek and the Hebrew, they conflict with each other and you don't even know what it says. Well, my answer is simply, whichever version you read, it doesn't change the meaning too much. It's still the same meaning. And therefore, there is really no corrupted text or no corrupted Bible. It really, no matter which version you read, it's just a different aspect of the same truth. Truth has many perspectives, many aspects. Like the four Gospels. Some people will say, oh, they contradict each other. But can you imagine? I've been a lawyer. We asked 4 witnesses of an accident. They were all there at the accident. They have 4 different versions. Yes, Nelson.
So I learned that for Gospels, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they have different perspectives based on their own occupation.
Yes.
For example, Luke is a doctor,
Mm.
Matthew's a tax collector.
Mm.
Mark and John, I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe they're fishermen.
John was a fisherman. Mark was a disciple of Peter's, probably friend with the fisherman. Yeah.
So they have different perspectives based on their own occupation.
Their own occupations give them a different perspective. They're angled in the accident, right? I was looking at this side. My neighbor was in an accident, and somebody said, I saw the green light in her favor. And somebody says, I think I saw the red light because maybe it was as the green turned red, right? So you have different perspectives, and doesn't mean they contradict each other. But when we look at the 4 different perspectives of the same accident, we begin to see the 360-degree picture rather than just one picture.
What exactly is a contradiction?
Not really that much, but sometimes different ways of saying the same thing. So, for example, Jesus in one gospel said, "Blessed are the poor," and in another version, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Yeah, and there's a contradiction. It may be a contradiction in terms of poor and poor in spirit mean 2 different things. One is poverty, financial poverty. One is spiritual poverty. But it could also be Jesus saying the same things in 2 different situations. And sometimes people, as they recount an incident, they remember certain words better than others.
Or they need to improve their logic.
Yeah. So I think essentially when we read the Bible, we have to read with this mind that there would be apparent contradictions, and many of these contradictions can be resolved by just an analysis. Maybe I went too deep. Maybe you didn't get it all totally. You can watch the video and check. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is, the scholars will say this has 4 possible translations, and all 4 translations are aspects of the same truth. They all can be possible. It doesn't have to be this or that. It doesn't have to be binary. It will be all 4 at the same time at different times. Okay? So the righteous, my righteousness comes from faith. The righteous by faith will live by faith. Yeah, basically that's it. So as I live my life as a Christian, I live by faith, day by day, in my faith in God, and knowing that God, like my wife would share, living inside me, changing me, guiding me, directing me. Okay, the righteous shall live by faith. So justification, we're coming back to this, and maybe hopefully it doesn't get boring. Paul comes back. This is kind of like a summary verse, executive summary of what he's going to talk about. Yeah, righteousness by faith, what it means, and justification by faith, what it means. It's a very big theme of Romans. And let me repeat, Paul does not say we're made righteous by faith the first time we believe. We are not made righteous. We are still the same rotten people, but we are only declared righteous by God. The judge says you're free to go. You may still stink, but you're righteous to go because your fine has been paid, your punishment has been made. The actual transformation that we go through is going to take the rest of our lives. The sanctification is for life until we see God in heaven. Okay? Questions? Yeah, Richard. Yeah. Okay. Maybe James. And then Richard.
Okay. How we lost the space? Because some people say that now I believe and now some people say now I return and don't want to believe. The space that's space it's a real place.
Can I lose my faith?
Yeah.
Okay, basically the question is, can I lose my faith? Can I believe in Jesus today and I'm saved, and then I really decline into a life of really terrible rottenness, and I'm so bad that no longer will God look at me, and so I will not be in heaven at all. Yeah, I lost my faith.
And you become some other, like a Buddhism or
Or you will become a Buddhist or Muslim or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
There's this parable I saying like so the demonic spirit like went outside the person, I mean and then he was wondering, the spirit was wandering outside, but then he went back to the household with 7 more deadly spirits. I think it's
Oh, okay. Richard is talking about a story in an event in the Bible where this person had a lot of evil spirits and is cast out, and Jesus wants that you got to replace, because if the house is clean, now the even more spirits will come in, right? Because it's now a clean house, they come back to a clean house. Meaning that if you cleanse your life and you don't replace it with God, the evil will come back. Yeah, the evil spirits will come back. But back to this issue of faith. You see, the thing is, it does appear from a few verses in Hebrews, for example, that you can actually come to a point where you can be so angry with God, even as a Christian, that you lose your salvation, you lose your faith. It seems possible. And maybe when we look at human beings around us, we do see examples of that. And a very good example people would tell me is that Billy Graham, this evangelist that has died, and he was very successful evangelist around the world, he had a contemporary who worked with him, and I was actually a better preacher than he was, Billy Graham. And this man was even a pastor of a church down at Bayview. Bayview.
Yeah, the pastor.
Yeah. And he lost his faith.
He's the founder.
Founder of the church, yeah. And he died non-Christian. Yeah. So we look at that and say, so I can lose my faith. Okay. I do not know the final answer. Looking at this man is very scary, that a Christian who has even founded a church died a non-Christian. Now,
How's that even possible?
okay, so let me unravel that a little bit for you, bit by bit. I believe that my faith, when I came to choose God, there was a moment in my life I actually said, God, I choose you. I will follow you. The reality is I made a choice. But is that a real choice? Did something behind me, my genes, or maybe the devil, or maybe even the angels, whatever, is saying, you got no choice. You got to choose this. You got to choose Jesus. In that case, then my choice is determined for me. It's not a choice. Okay? But the reality of it all is, yes, at the moment, I felt I chose. I had a very free choice. I could go back to my old ways of drinking and gambling and womanizing or whatever, or I choose Jesus. And I did. I'm here. 50 years later, I'm here. I did. But at the same time, the Bible says that my faith was given by God. It was determined by God. So did I really choose? No, God chose for me. It's like I didn't choose my high school and God my teacher chose it for me. So is that a real choice?
No.
But I tick the box, that my teacher says to me, you choose Raffles Institution, and I say, okay, and I tick the box myself. Is that my choice or my teacher's choice? And my teacher meant it for my own good. And I went to a top school and I really grew intellectually and all that. If I had gone to a neighborhood school, maybe not. A choice was made for me. I didn't know the impact of it, and the impact was good. So the reality of life is, I look at it and say, sometimes I wonder if I really made a choice. Was it my choice or somebody chose it for me? And I just accepted it. And so there is this struggle we have as we read at Paul, read through Paul, through Romans. There was a moment I chose. But at the same time, because God is all powerful and sovereign, my choice was always in His view. He always knew I would choose this way. And so God knew the reality of my choice, whether it was a true choice or it was a pretend choice. And maybe for the pastor who founded the church, he was pretending to be a Christian, or maybe for a woman, he found it convenient to be a Christian. And even looks good to found a church and be a pastor. So the reality may be God sees through him and say, no, you never made a real choice for me. He never really chose me. Or a third scenario would be our 2-minute Christian, right? 5-minute Christian. Before he dies, this man says, God, I really have messed it up, haven't I? I was walking so faithfully with you, and I was walking with Billy Graham, more successful than him, and I gave it all up to be a non-Christian. I'm so sorry, God. 2 minutes later, he's gone. Possible? And we don't know, right? I just have to leave it to God. God, you know. I don't care about that. I just need to make sure that as far as I'm concerned, my faith is in your hands. You protect me and you shelter me. And Jesus says that all that the Father has given me, I have not lost. Right? Remember that? And that's in John. When we feel that the choice we have is something which you cannot fully explain. It's like the Bible doesn't say clearly, okay, we are talking here now about, say, free will. And philosophers way before Christianity struggled with this idea. If we were to punish somebody for doing something wrong, he has to be a free agent, meaning he's got to be able to say, this is good, this is bad, and I chose bad, so I deserve to be punished. But if life is determined for us, no matter how I chose, I was born this way, my genes made me do this way, I'm a victim. And so we have this scientist called Sapolsky who says, criminals are victims of their circumstances and their genes. We cannot punish them. That's a conclusion. When you are determined, because my genes made me like this, I am very sure my genes didn't make me like this. My genes may have made me brilliant. I was so angry at 17 when my classmates all went to university. I had better grades than them. I didn't, just because I'm born in a poor family, I couldn't go to university. I was so angry and was so bitter. I could have remained in my bitterness and never moved on. But I said, no, I will make something out of my life. And I joined the military and I said, I will save up money, I'll earn the money I can and go to university on my own steam. I did not let my genes or my poverty circumstances restrict me to where I was. I made a choice. I made a fierce and rebellious choice. But of course, it was rebellious. I didn't realize that God needed me to go through the military where I was just shown how weak my strength was. I was determined. I was, persevering. But the military was a tough place. I didn't break, but I could have broken. And I was at one stage where I was flat on my back, just drowned with my bitterness, my anger, my disappointment, my disgust with life and my parents and the government for not giving me a scholarship and all those things just overwhelming me. I'm flat on my back and I look up and I say, God, I think you are real. You must be there. If you are real, please come into my life. I need you now. I can't do it on my own. I tried. I did. So God had to bring me through the army to realize that no matter how strong I think I was, He made me realize I wasn't that strong. I was still the strongest in my family. I'm the only one who made it to university. I was the only one in my neighborhood who made it to university. In my elementary school, I was the only one who made it to a PhD. 2 of us, out of 400 students in a slum neighborhood, poverty-stricken, 2 of us made it to a university. My classmate made it to a bachelor's degree. I made it to a PhD. Did I remain in my poverty? Was I determined? Or was I, as in determinism, was I fated to be poor and therefore always poor and never go to university? I could have believed that. Chinese culture allows me to believe that. 天啊, heaven, why do you make me like this? Why did you make me a rich man's son? I could have been a rich man's grandson though. My grandfather died too early. So I think my reality of life I've seen is my life, yes, to some extent determined by my circumstances, maybe by my personality. I did not allow it to happen. Let me give you another example. My personality, my genes. I'm actually an introvert. you know, those of you who have been here in this house many years, you know, 7 o'clock is dinner time. 7 o'clock, from 6 o'clock to 7, I'm out in my bedroom. I'm actually resting, charging up myself, praying, you know, replenishing my energy, because I'm not an extrovert. An extrovert loves crowds. Steve Tosha up there, the big man that I say is my son, he's an extrovert. He says, Dad, he calls me Dad, right? Dad, I get charged up when I see crowds. My energy just go overwhelmingly overpowering. I get drained by crowds. So I need to recharge before I come out and meet the crowd. Do I let my introversion decide what jobs I do? No. Actually, I think God didn't allow that, because this introvert has been a member of parliament, professor. Professors can be a lawyer dealing with clients in jobs that demand speaking, and a pastor. We are not fated to be locked into by our genes or circumstances or whatever. I don't see that reality. And even if the Bible seems a bit uncertain, you know, as you read it, there is both possibility. There's this free will. I freely chose God. I freely chose Jesus. And yet at the same time, my free choice was determined by God. But then Jesus says, all that the Father has given me, I have not lost any. And whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. Jesus gives that assurance that if you think that you're fated not to choose me because the Father did not choose you, Jesus says, but if you choose me, I will not chase you away. In other words, both are true. I can choose you and you can choose me. And both are true. Doesn't have to be binary. Doesn't have to be this or that.
Prodigal son.
Prodigal son. Okay. Now that's a very, very good story too. Actually, it's the wrong title. See, titles are given by human beings. The Bible doesn't have titles. It's actually not the story of the prodigal son. It's the story of the prodigal father. I tell you why. Okay, this is a story, right? The father is a rich man. He's got 2 sons. The eldest son is very, or Chinese would say, guai, very obedient, very compliant, well behaved, does all the right things, and his father should love him, right? And Jewish culture, by the way, the eldest son gets double portion. So the father's wealth, 2 sons, 2/3 go to eldest son, 1/3 to younger son. So the younger son one day says, I have had it to my here. My brother is always a good boy and he's always respected and everybody loves him. And I'm the rascal, I'm the scoundrel. I don't care about this family anymore. Father, give me my inheritance, my 1/3, and I will go. And I am kissing you goodbye. I don't care about you. I'm going my own life. It's my choice. And father very sadly gave him the 1/3. You see, an inheritance is when the father dies, you get your inheritance. You're basically saying, Father, I cannot wait for you to die. So the father sadly says, okay, can't wait for me to die. You take the money, you go. So the younger son, took the 1/3 and went to a far country. He squandered his money. He spent it all on women and wine and song and whatever, karaoke, Las Vegas. And then he lost all his money. He squandered all his money. And then he ended up feeding pigs, the farmer's assistant feeding pigs. Now remember, he's a Jew. And what have Jews got to do with pigs? Zero. But he was so low down, he had no job except to look after pigs, and he had no choice. The Jew looking after pigs. And he was so disgusted with himself. He says, I have a rich father and I'm living worse than a pig. I don't even eat what a pig eats. And he says, I will go back to my father and say, sorry, father, I was wrong. Please take me in as your slave. I will be your slave for the rest of my life. I'm so sorry, father, I did wrong. I'm not worthy of calling you father. So he's rehearsing his speech and he's walking home. And from a distance, we are told the father has been looking out for him for years, looking out every evening. He goes up, where's my son? And then he sees his son, his wayward scoundrel of a son coming from a distance. The father ran towards the son to embrace him, to hug him and say, welcome home, son. Is that the prodigal father or the prodigal son? The father should not even be looking out for him. The father saw him and ran for him and said, son, come back. And the son started his rehearsed speech. Father, I wronged you and I should be your slave. But before he could go on, father says, come, kill the best calf, give him a feast. My son who is gone is now back. There should be a scene of happiness everywhere. But there's always a fairy godmother who didn't get invited to the party. The eldest son was very angry. The eldest son says, Father, I have been good all my life. And my scoundrel or brother visits prostitutes and squanders your money and wishes you to die. He comes back and you give him a festival. What kind of father are you? What kind of justice is that? Is the eldest son right? Yeah, I think to some extent he's right. I did all that. But he didn't see that it was not unfair because he still has his 2/3 inheritance. But his brother who lost it all finally got it back. His brains at least. And the father says, you are welcome home. You're still my son. You're still honored in this family. You're not a slave. You are still my son. Your status is son. No matter how bad you are, actually your status is you are my son. We are all sons and daughters of God. No matter how bad we are, no matter how far we go, we can be the prodigal son looking at the pigs and say, I don't even eat as well as the pigs. In my father's house, as a slave of my father, I eat better than the pigs. So I will go back and be a slave to my father. And my father says, no, you're a son. Your status is son, unchanged. Just need to turn back.
99 plus 1.
99 plus 1, the one lost sheep. Yeah.
So that's me. And the real face can't be lost. So from
I personally think the real person who has really given his life to God, God knows, or God will not lose you. But if you made a choice out of, maybe it's a good deal, huh? It's like my wife tried, it's a good deal. But somewhere along the way, my wife became a real believer because she says, hey, God was so real. I thought it was a good deal just to be a Christian. And then now it's not a good deal. Every time I do wrong, I have to correct it.
because just the example about the younger son walk away from his father and he did a war bad thing, but then later he realized, oh, I should going back. Yeah, now I'm nothing. I'm so bad, and I should going back. Even I can become the slave, I want to going back. So that means he regret.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just like us, we are sinners and we we get away from God, and now we realize Jesus died for us, and then we want to give back my life to the Jesus because Jesus saved us. We believe that, so that's me. We become the son of the Father. So that's called the edification. So this edification is the son of God. So we become the son of God.
Yeah.
So this can't be lost. That's what
I think we can have the feeling that we lost it. Okay, I'll give you another example. When I was doing my PhD in London, and I never thought I would ever pass. I said, my brain's not good enough to do a PhD. And I used to tell God, please send me home, but nothing happened. Right? So I'm still stuck in London doing my PhD and struggling. And my schoolmates and my colleague came 1 year after me and left for home 3 years later. And 5 years later, I'm still in London and I'm so despairing of my ever getting a PhD. I said, God, why do you send me here? I will never get it. See, look at somebody else, he's gone, and I'm still here. Actually, at one point in my life, I said, God, I cannot take it anymore. I'm going to draw this line in the sand, okay? Of course, it's not a real line, but I said, God, don't push me over this line. I'm not coming back. He pushed me over. I am not coming back. I was so angry with God, I threatened him. Does it work? No, because God says, I will not allow you to go near that line. And even after I made that rant against God, God turned me back and I realized that I was the stupid one, not God. And I went home. I got a letter from the university saying, you've spent too many years doing your PhD, come back, we need you to start teaching. So I went back at the end of 89, started teaching in 1990, and forgot about my thesis. I'm not going to get it. It was a good experience in London, happy times. My daughter was born there, happy memories of London, but that's it. In 1991, University of London wrote me and said, the thesis is submitted, we want you to come back and do a defense. So, I get another chance. I can defend my thesis. But I have not read my thesis for 1 year. I don't even know what I wrote. So I said, God, what a joke. Here I am. So I brought my 400-page thesis all the way to London for my examination, my oral examination, because I cannot remember what I wrote. And I arrived 1 week early to make sure I don't get jet lag and make sure I can read through my 400 pages to remember what I said. And I just remembered, I said, God, when I was near the line, you didn't push me over. I just asked for one simple request now. Please give me a simple oral exam. We call it a viva. Please give me a simple viva. I had a tough time and you know it. And just let me breeze through. Since I'm here now, let me breeze through this viva. So I brought my 400-page book to the exam hall, sat down. There was no chair. I sat on the floor in my suit and tie, sitting down on the floor with my big book, trying to read. And the chairman of the panel came out. Oh, you're here. Come on in. Have you had lunch? I was like, oh, yeah. But I never had lunch, right? Too anxious. So anyway, he says, we are just finishing our lunch. So he took a sandwich wrapper, he wrapped it up, threw it in, said, I'm finished with lunch. Come, take a seat. So I sat down and he says, congratulations. We have decided to recommend a PhD, recommend to the Senate to give you a PhD.
They must have a good lunch.
They had a good lunch.
Somebody give them
I said,
a
God,
good
I asked for an easy viva. I didn't ask for no viva.
lunch. They can't stand anymore. Too long.
Anyway, so the chairman says to me, but the university has convened us to examine you, so we will talk to you for 1 hour. Yeah, we talk for 1 hour. So he turned to one section, small section of my thesis on Singapore, which is the part I love best. I know the best. It's about Singapore. And he says, oh, what you wrote here. I said, no. We discussed that. And then before I know it, 1 hour is up. Congratulations again. You see, with a life like this, I was already 36. People would say if you are past 35, you're past 30 years old and you still don't have a PhD, don't even dream about it.
So PhD is not that difficult.
I have a friend he went to law school, got a law degree, but it took him 8 years to find a law firm. Right? When I met him, we got in touch, and he told me he met a lot of students who are in their 40s and 50s in law school. So the moral of the story is it's never too late to get in.
Never too late. Yeah, I had when I was sitting for my bar exam, I had a classmate who was 68 years old, starting life as a lawyer. Yeah, he had always wanted to be a lawyer.
I'd like to share one. At one of the churches I'm connected to, there was one of the elders who had never gone to university and had been in prison, and he became a Christian, and after being in church for a while, he decided to apply for law school. Wow. They actually let him in. He is now a practicing lawyer in Toronto, as well as the pastor of the church.
Wow.
And yeah, that's an interesting one.
Great story.
How old? He is about he's about 50 now. So he graduated law school about 10 years ago.
Yeah. Let me say one last thing and then we can close. And you have more questions, you can always check with me. And my email is askto@gmail.com. Always easy to remember this. Any questions? Ask to
For money.
at gmail.com. Go ahead and ask me for money. My Father in heaven has a lot of money. Yeah. So let me finish with this statement. Okay. Today we were looking at justification and sanctification. Justification is a legal term, and it describes that the person is righted in the eyes of God, in a right relationship with God, now that you believe in Jesus. Not from what you do, but entirely from what God Jesus has done. Not from following a long list of overwhelming rules, but simply trusting that God will lead and guide and empower us step by step. And God will enable us in His love and forgiveness not to fall away, because His promises He can keep. Now, justification, this process of giving us the status of being saints, is given entirely by faith. So it's not from our work, no matter how many years of work, but it is entirely by God's power and something we don't understand, simply liberated from our darkness and our negativeness, our bitterness, just by simply saying, I believe in you, Jesus. And after that, it is the beginning of a long journey through life, for me, 50 years already, trusting that what God promised in the beginning will continue being delivered in even totally unexpected ways, right? When I ask for something, He gives me even better. And from one degree to another, my faith is slowly being built up by Jesus in all these things that have happened in my life, year by year, time after time, things that are totally unbelievable. Even meeting my wife, I was such a shy man. I never imagined I would ever find a girlfriend, or ever imagined that a girl would be interested in me. I was so shy that I didn't even dare to pick up a phone to call a girl out for a date. And finally, it was this girl I liked in high school. When I finally graduated, I just got a shock of my life, because now I don't even have a phone number. And I liked her so much, and I don't even know how to call her. So I asked a friend of mine for her phone number. I called her up, talked for an hour. We didn't have our own phone, so I had a whole stack of coins I took together, and a tong, tong, tong. And I go tong, 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 and I talk. And I think nearly 2 hours later, I said goodbye. I put down the phone. I go, because I didn't ask her out.
You don't have enough coins.
Not enough coins. So you know what? I wrote her a letter. Say, I have 5-page letter. All about good things in front. And then finally, the last page, I said, would you like to go to a movie with me? And she wrote back, reply saying yes.
Which letter arrived first?
I mean, she has to reply, that comes later, right? But my point is, I was so painfully shy, I didn't even have the guts to call a girl and take her out for a movie. But when I met my wife, God just scheduled things in such a way. I had no interest in her. I had no interest in having a girlfriend, but we were thrown into a project that required 30 days of work, 10 hours a day. That's 3,000 hours.
You don't need any coins.
No, sorry, 300 hours. Don't need any coins. Yeah. Let's give thanks to God.